Welcome, everyone, to our double feature about movies that I don't think anybody in our audience would have gone and seen. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Oppenheimer and Barbie were pretty wild.
I'm very excited to see those together. And every time you and I have been in a theater together and one of the two trailers comes up,
we always look at each other. Yeah.
No, we don't even look at each other. It's just involuntarily, our bodies will just be like Oppenheimer comes, like Barbie, and like in unison, it will happen. It's incredible. But no, today we are going to be talking about the two movies that are, so we already talked about Flash, which had a very poor box office thing, and I'm surprised anybody's watching any of our YouTube shorts about it.
Yes.
And then now we're going to talk about a movie that got an even worse box office, which was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which I don't know how they were planning on this going, but apparently it had a budget of almost $300 million.
Oh my, that's too much.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but especially for the film we got, I was like, where'd all that?
That's too much. You know what? In hindsight, knowing that now, that's too much.
Yeah, and presumably a lot of it went to COVID restriction stuff and just rescheduling everything. A lot of people might not know that when you're filming and you have to take like an extra day, that compounds so much. Like everything gets pushed back. So I could only imagine that it kept doing that consistently, but also that I don't know how much Harrison Ford was just interested in doing too many things. So it seems like there was a lot of stunt doubling and putting a mask on people and digitally replacing stuff. I feel really bad that this movie did that. And did I tell you how much it presumably made in the first box office?
We were doing my least favorite thing.
Yeah.
This is my least favorite thing, when someone teases something and doesn't finish it.
Yeah.
This video, we're going to do Indiana Jones and Turn Up the Dasani, and next episode, The Astro City.
Yeah, and all the critics have been calling it the diaper of destiny, the diaper of dementia. Unfortunately, everybody's being very uncharitable with Harrison Ford.
Yes.
And I don't know if I had mentioned before. Did I talk about the box office for the first weekend?
Okay, so weekend? No. All I know right now is that this is the fourth or fifth Indiana Jones movie, depending on who you ask.
Exactly, fifth. And I think if you do count it as fourth, I'm curious why you would leave out Crystal Skull if you saw this movie and were just like, oh, it just fits in with the other three. Like, I think it deliberately draws back to Crystal Skull. Like, it's all a chronology.
I feel like Crystal Skull, this is probably being way too generous, is very similar to the prequels in that with time and distance, they have a place in your heart.
Yes.
But when you saw them, you're like, what the hell is this?
I was very charitable on my first viewing, heard everybody hated it, and was like, I guess I get it. And then when I got it on digital, I was like, this is fun. I enjoy this a lot. And I'm curious if I'm going to feel the same way about this movie, because you and I have very differing opinions. Oh, yes. And to just mention what we had alluded to, I heard that this got, on opening weekend, $60 million. For a $300 million budget, that's not great. And I don't know how Disney is feeling about a lot of their most recent investments, like Elemental, which also didn't do very good. And besides Marvel, which is consistently bringing the money, but probably at a reduced rate, I'm curious what their plan is now moving forward.
Yeah, hang on. I want to be clear here. So is 20% of the total cost of the film bad for opening weekend?
Yes.
What is typical?
What you want to do, presumably, is that your box office should probably, opening weekend box office should be 80 to 100% of your budget, because the rest of the residual, over time, will make up for your marketing cost. Whenever people say, this is how much the movie costs, usually double it, and that will account for your marketing.
Okay.
So there's a potential that the entire production probably cost almost $600 million. So for them to make a tenth of that in the opening weekend is not a good look.
Capital O, capital O, lowercase f.
Oof. Yes. So yeah, let's jump right into it. I want to get we'll go into spoilers later, and we'll probably cover some stuff that I don't know if it would be too deep spoilers, but what do you reckon? What did you think of it?
It is not the worst Indiana Jones movie I've seen. Not by far. Here's the thing. I don't want to give it too much credit. I was as an Indiana Jones film,
sure,
solid. As an action film with stakes and payoff, solid.
Okay.
As something that you could probably enjoy without needing to know the full history of the Indiana Jones saga, decent.
I would give that there aren't that many callbacks to old Indiana Jones stuff. There's very blatant stuff that I feel like you wouldn't be able to get similar like to Spider-Man No Way Home, where it's like, man, if you didn't know the thing, this isn't going to be fun to you. But they go away quick enough that you're like, it's fine. But I will, if we're looking for my opinion, I'll say that I would put this on par, if not worse, in my opinion, than Crystal Skull. And that's because I've gotten a huge soft spot for Crystal Skull now. I don't dislike Shia LaBeouf too much. I think it was as campy as the other Indiana Jones movies. But the one thing I'll say that I felt like that one had a little bit more than this is a jaunty energy to Indy. Like there were a couple of moments where there's one in particular that I'm like, I like this. I don't know why people didn't like it. Where he swings from like one Jeep to another and he crashes right into the front of the Jeep and like destroys it. And then he's like sitting on his ass, like looking, and there are two Russians to the sides of him. He's like, I thought that was closer. And then he punches one. That's Indy. This is some Indy stuff. This movie, I felt like the entire time there was less of that energy. And of course, like this is supposed to be a different Indiana Jones. This movie came out 15 years after the last one.
Yes,
I get it.
It's been years, decades even.
Exactly. He's not the same guy, but that doesn't mean that that's what I want to see from an Indiana Jones movie. And I get that that's like, okay, cool. You have an opinion that you don't like the new direction it's going in. But my biggest problem is that we had gone to dinner before watching this movie, and your lovely wife said, Temple of Doom is probably my favorite Indiana Jones movie. You and I both balked and we're like, that's ridiculous. Last Crusade is better. Even Raiders of the Lost Ark is better. You're ridiculous. Then I immediately went home and put it on with my girlfriend, and we were just like, I wonder how Temple of Doom has stacked up. It was a riot. We were having such a good time. Oh my God. There's one moment in particular, I'll put up the GIF of like, Indy is like, they're stuck with the bugs in the room, and like the thing's coming down, and he goes, we are going to die. And like he puts on a frown, and it's fucking great. So there's elements of these other movies that like Temple of Doom is so energetic. There's no moment of just like, I wonder when something fun's gonna happen. It's just nonstop ride, because Spielberg didn't want to make it, apparently. So he's like, I'm gonna still have fun. James Mangold making this movie, I don't think is a bad thing. I think he's an incredibly good director, but it didn't have that same energy that I wanted from an Indiana Jones movie. And that's why I would be like, it's not bad. I think a lot of people wouldn't dislike it if they saw it, but I'm gonna be a perfectionist about Indiana Jones.
Yeah, okay, well here's the problem, man. I know I made this exact comment to you, which is you're a baker who has spent your entire life learning the craft of baking cake. So now every time you taste a slice of cake, you can't just enjoy the cake. You have to dissect. Oh, there's some cardamom in here, and I think there's they got a little more sugar.
They could have taken it out of the oven just a little sooner to make it like moist.
Yes. So it's like every time I hear your feedback, I have to take it with a big grain of salt, because it's like, on the one hand, like, should we actually talk about the movie, or are we just going to keep being meta about what elements around the movie we feel what?
I think, is there anything else you wanted to say about pre-spoilers? Because there's like a couple things I want to mention.
I will say, for the like message and movie they were going for, I think they nailed it.
Okay.
I think all the like grievances people have did not like destroy the story for me, or like derail anything. I think every part of this movie, for whatever vision the director had, I think it was executed to the best of their ability. I always will say like less CGI, more practical, but still.
Sure. And yes, I would say that it's a totally coherent movie, and it was pretty good. But I'll say that there's kind of two camps about it. Where one, if you're like an Indiana Jones fan and you love Indiana Jones a lot, I think they would still really enjoy this movie. There's plenty of stuff there, including some like, I wouldn't call them callbacks, but it felt like the show. Like, do you remember the 90s Indiana Jones show? There's a couple of elements in there that I'm like, this kind of harkens back to that, and I like that a lot. It has some of that spirit. But yeah, I personally would not recommend this to too many people if they're like, I just want to go to the movies and have fun. I feel like this is weirdly enough part of the Disney franchise of being like, well, here's a long running thing that you guys are going to love if you've been keeping up with it for a while. Like all of the Marvel movies. I can't tell if anybody not having seen a Marvel movie would go see Quantumania and be like, yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Like, I don't know if everybody would just kind of be able to do that. So I wouldn't recommend it to people that don't have a history, which I think was the general audience that went to go see it were just people that like Indiana Jones, because it did not do super great for another sequel after 15 years of the last one, which people didn't love. It did worse in the box office than Crystal Skull did opening weekend, and I think that's because after seeing Crystal Skull, they're like, never again. I will never be misled like this.
Yes, there's a trilogy, is the 3, we are done.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get into the actual movie.
Spoilers. Okay, go for it.
All right, so this movie is Indiana Jones it's 2 movies, right?
Yeah.
It's first Indiana Jones doing his classic Nazi shtick.
It's an episode of the TV show.
It does not, the other Indiana Jones films, when he's dealing with Nazis, it's like in the lead up to World War II, where he's just like out there and Nazis happen to be there. Here he is actively invading Europe.
Presumably in the original movies, he's like late 20s, early 30s. And then I think in that sequence in the beginning, it's into World War II. So he's like 40, something like that. So yeah, there's no, Nazis, I hate these guys. Some people have heard of Nazis. It's like, no, this is the end of World War II. They're fleeing and they've caught Indiana Jones snooping around.
He's doing a big snoop. And this is where we met, the actor's name's Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes, yeah. And I think that he was supposed to be a pastiche of Werner von Braun.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, you helped us get to the moon, which is also a kind of stick at, after World War II, a bunch of Nazi scientists.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip.
Exactly.
Operation Paperclip was the project in which the USSR and the United States, but especially the United States, were quietly divvying up war criminals to figure out which war criminal was going to help them build a better atomic bomb or a rocket to space or whatever the heck.
So we meet in the very beginning Mads Mikkelsen, as well as his friend, who I forgot. He's played by Zola from Captain America.
Yeah, a lot of Marvel actors in this movie.
Yes, and I don't remember the actor's name or his character's name, but he is kind of a bumbling guy, and they're both archaeologists. Like, they're here as archaeologists. He's not here as this action hero, and they're looking for the Spear of Longinus.
I love it. It's Neon Genesis Evangelion crossover is confirmed.
And they said Longinus, and I'm like, you stop right there. This is where the movie first lost me. It was not with the deep fake, not with anything else. It was where they misspelled.
Jesus died so you could say Longinus.
Yes, exactly.
How dare you?
Yeah.
It's in the Bible.
And I think I did us a big disservice because I bought us tickets to see it in Dolby. And though it was beautiful and a huge screen and a great time, I personally could not unsee the CGI face, but I feel like anybody seeing it in standard def probably wouldn't mind. James Mangold's really good at this action stuff, but the main thing that I miss is that there's these big wide shots that you get in the old Indiana Jones movies that are just somebody running from right of frame to left of frame or vice versa. There's just stuff happening and it's fun and you can track what's going on. And this movie didn't have too much of that. And it's not a bad thing because James Mangold in Logan, similar filming style. It was really good. It looked great. There was some CG, but it just felt like too much was happening. And the pure juxtaposition, his Last Crusade in the beginning, they're on a train and they're running through train cars and it's fun. And it's like, they had to do this one at night because of the CG, but also it's a little bit moodier. It's the end of the war and they're Nazis and such. There was too many cuts, too many CG elements. And I think the moment that we all laughed was when Indy finally gets on the train and he's running from train car.
It's just animatic of someone running on the train, and then they forgot to replace it with the actual render.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just, his posture while he's running, and it just looks so silly. And that encapsulated the whole thing. That I'm like, this isn't bad, but there are parts of this that I just can't forgive. And that immediately started it. But yeah, so we realized that Mads Mikkelsen, he's looking for the Spear of Longinus, and Indy finds it and he's just like, it's a fake. Oh, you son of a gun. To which I'm curious what the Nazis would have done with the Spear of Longinus. If it had
its powers change every single time someone brings it up.
Exactly.
Do you use it to stab gigantic space alien monsters, or do you use it because it can control time and or destiny?
I think if you put it in water, it turns it into wine.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, because just all of Jesus' blood coming out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then they realized that Mads Mikkelsen is straight up just like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The spear's different. I have this thing, which is the Antikythera, which is Archimedes'
It's the Dial of Dasani.
The Dial of Dasani.
It created in their reality, the only water is Dasani. And so this is how they created it. So Archimedes used Dasani to displace all the other water.
So the Spear of Longinus, if you put it in water, it turns into Dasani. Yeah. Exactly. It turns anything into Dasani.
And that's why they live in a hellscape.
Exactly. We get, at the very beginning of it, I gotta say, a weirdly quirky scene of Indy being hanged to death.
Oh yeah.
Like
super fun.
Like he's getting hanged and he's trying to tell a story about like, Hitler's stupid and you're all stupid for following him. And then a bomb drops through the roof and is like slowly going down. Like everybody's like, whoa, oh, what are we gonna do? I'm like, is this played for laughs or not? I can't tell right now. And then it goes through and then the entire building collapses, it explodes. And then Indy is using the inertia of his weight to swing back and forth while being hanged. And
he has hands free, so it's not like just all of his weight on his neck.
Sure. And frankly, I did have a really good time with that. I thought it was fun.
That was like a classic Indiana Jones romp. Like that is anyone who wants to talk crap about that or like all the like weird little like this is too goofy. It's always been goofy.
Yes.
Don't ever bring that stuff in here. It's always been goofy.
Yeah.
The little monkey Zig Heils in the first movie.
Yes. Well, everyone jumps to the jumping out of an airplane on a raft moment in Temple of Doom. Totally love it. I don't mind any of that. Like, see, him getting in the refrigerator from Crystal Skull has now become an endearing moment.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody hated it back then. Now people draw back to it as like, wasn't that fun? Didn't we all have fun?
Okay, so Indiana Jones is supposed to be an archetypal pulp hero.
Yeah.
He is supposed to just be like, oh yeah, this character would be raiding tombs and going on adventures into the Wild West.
On next week's adventure,
Yes,
Indy will
exactly.
find the Holy Grail. Like stuff like that.
Literally, like when Crystal Skull takes place.
Sure.
That's like kind of when like it's post World War II, the space age, the space race is ramping up. So like spacemen and this idea of like aliens or whatever it turns out.
Red Scare.
Yeah. So that stuff makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just realized, is this like a commentary on like modern fascism?
I actually think so.
Because that's the entire point. Like, the entire point of the movie is first 30 minutes, Indiana Jones fights Nazis.
Yes.
Many years go by.
Yes.
Indiana Jones is now a gruff old man who is still teaching at schools and doing his normal gruff old man thing. He's not in the field anymore. But like the entire movie is driven by this Werner von Braun-esque Nazi man whose entire motivation is to go back in time to relive the glory days of Adolf Hitler's 1,000-year Reich.
And this is the thing that I find interesting about like how I think that is also trying to point out something about modern time is how much what was your prediction about Mads Mikkelsen's character? What were you like? I think you said you turned to Sam and were just like, I think that this is what he's doing.
No,
and then once
she turned to me.
Oh, she did?
You give her the credit for
No,
this
I didn't
one.
know. I didn't know.
She
who
turned
said
to me
it.
and she said, I think they're going to go back in time and kill Hitler.
Yeah.
And you know what? Low key, that was the plan the whole time.
Exactly. And that's what I mean about how I think it's pulling back. Like, I think that there's a sect of Nazis now that don't revere Hitler as much. Like they're Nazis, but not like Hitler like lovers.
I'm not sure if I want to talk about it. There's no version of Nazis that are okay.
No, and I agree. I'm not saying that's a good thing. This isn't a good thing.
I know.
Cameron.
Okay, we just want to be clear. Mads Mikkelsen's character thinks it's a good thing.
Yes, no, but that's what I'm saying is that it's not about the guy.
Yeah.
It's not about the movement that he did. It's about Mads Mikkelsen going back. He's like, no, I would have been able to do the Holocaust better, kind of shit.
Like, I learned all those mistakes we made, so I wouldn't make those mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't really care too much about the figure. He cares more about the movement, which I think is worse. And they're both very, very bad. But him being like, no, I can do death camps better. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I had some ideas about the ending. And this is kind of where I want to go into the MacGuffin about the Archimedes dial, the dial of destiny, the Antikythera, which is a thing in history.
Yeah.
Have you seen the pictures of it?
I mean, it looks kind of like that, doesn't it? Just is very rusted over with seawater and stuff.
Yes, I would liken it to like a big clock where it's just a bunch of gears put together, and all of the renderings of how it would look were just a bunch of gears. But how many people are just like, this shouldn't have existed? Like,
I hate
gears
that
weren't
trope.
really a thing.
I hate that trope so much because gears have always, for as long as we've had wheels, people have been able to figure out gears. It's not like dark magic.
No, and I know, but like of that delicacy, like there were very, very fine gears around.
Yeah, but if you look back, ancient Chinese, ancient Egyptian artisans were able to create clockworks like that. It's not secret magic.
Sure.
From like 2,000 years ago. It's been a known technology for a long time.
Okay.
Almost all windmills requires some form of gear work. So at the very least, you have people perfecting the concept.
Yeah.
I understand why they think it's like very out of place, but like that's one of my like this one is like gets a little like Chariots of the Gods, Ancient Aliens. Like,
yeah, exactly.
oh, did the aliens teach them to make a time traveling clock?
And that brings in the MacGuffin exciting part of it. Well, going in, I was like, I wonder what the dial's going to be. And I told you guys, I'm like, I feel like it's going to be a Golden Compass style, like his Dark Materials thing where it just points out things you want, and then therefore
Davy Jones' locker.
Yes, exactly, and it gives you this prescience that you can just go do stuff and be the best at it. And so the Fourth Reich is going to be great, and that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
And then we find out, what did you guys think it was going to be?
I thought the Dial of Destiny was going to turn into like an Avengers style, like time traveling through Indy's best moments.
Yeah.
Trying to relive some sort of lost thing. And I gotta say right now, I'm gonna let y'all know that's not what they did. And holy crap, the way the dial works out, a million times better than that.
Yes. And I thought it was going to be like a Back to the Future Part 2 style thing, where there'd like literally be photoshopped into the background of like some stuff. And then
when he makes a face, we're going to die. And then just like around the corner. Yeah,
exactly. And Short Round's like, what the fuck? And I totally thought that was going to be the like third act. And especially that they point out like Indy was there at the time that they're predicting they would go back to. Like we see in the intro. So I'm like, oh, I feel like that's something that Indy's hiding something that he might already know that. Not at all. Not what happens whatsoever. And so before we get to that, to the ending and what actually does happen in that big reveal, we're in spoilers already, but I want to bring up and kind of go through Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character.
Yes.
Yeah, because we have all the Nazi stuff. And then we cut to Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, mostly naked.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Irishing up his coffee.
So good.
And beating down like hippies' doors and saying like, it's a school day. What are you doing? He's like, no, it's Moon Day. Come on, old timer,
That's
you old
true.
geezer.
It is Moon Day.
And then we find he goes to work. We see how much he dislikes being there.
This is last day of work.
Exactly. He's retiring, and that he's giving a speech. He's giving a lecture about Archimedes. And we find that he's like has such huge reverence for Archimedes that we didn't know before.
That still makes no freaking sense.
What?
How's that his last day? He knows that he's going to have to give exams later.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Is I think they were having a retirement party, but he wasn't like.
No. I'm going to be going to be grumpy about this.
Sure. And so we get to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, who is sitting in the class, and she's kind of like parroting. They're having a bit of a like volleying back and forth about Archimedes and how cool he was. And the Antikythera, which is the big thing here, and that the whole chase is that there's two parts to it. So one part they have found in the beginning, and that Indy already has, and that they're trying to find this stone tablet that will lead them to the other half. The other half. And that's like the entire chase of the whole thing.
First of all, obviously, I hate that she's in this because we don't need Star Wars characters in our Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones famously never had any Star Wars characters in it whatsoever. What's this about? I hate it.
Exactly.
So first, I'm obviously mad about that. There's two things I want to bring up here that have to do with that whole middle section and like this. So first of all, she shows up under the guise of, oh yeah, I'm your goddaughter, and I wanted to see if you had this thing because my dad, I wanted to do a thing with it. And she's like playing off the trope that she's like wants to follow in her dad's footsteps.
Yes.
That's my first favorite subversion. She has absolutely no interest in being an archaeologist. She's basically a grave robber, and everything about her character is like this girl who, between how archaeology took over her dad's life and her godfather's life, has had no meaningful parental figure and has just been like whatevering it up until now, and this is just another score for her. So like that's an excellent subversion of how you think it's going to be like the Shia LaBeouf, like, oh, this is going to be the next Indiana Jones and he's going to step into the role and blah blah blah. It's like not
she's in it for her, and she's in it for her next buck.
There are no heroes. There are no heroes here.
Yeah, and she's more of a Han Solo type, where she's just swindling people left and right out of money. And I thought she did that great. And the one moment that really frustrates me is how out of context in the trailer we get that line of her saying like, he's like, he stole it from me and I stole it from him. That's capitalism. In the discourse now, you don't bring up capitalism unless it's a refutation of it. She in the movie is a big.
She's a queen capitalist.
Yes, and so that moment isn't meant to be like, haha, like isn't capitalism? She's like, no, I want money. Give me money now, money please. So she's consistently like going to find the Antikythera so she can make money off of it. She can get out of her debts or just go live a lavish life. That's all she wants to do, is go from next score to next score and live this like crazy dangerous life, which is really fun. And it brings that element that we're kind of missing by Harrison Ford just being old and not really being able to do all the fun stuff. And so I thought she did that great. I thought she was really fun in the movie. And there's this huge, everybody dislikes it, mostly because I don't think they particularly divorced the actor from the character, because everything that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has done in the past is a refutation of all that stuff. The character from Star Wars was a big revolutionary, droids deserve rights. And then Fleabag is just a character that's kind of also doing shitty things, but is going through a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
So I think that people were just going into it already expecting they know what it would be about. And I think that she did a pretty good job.
I also like that they had a more tasteful short round in this movie.
Yeah,
They kind of still needed that globe-trotting, like, yeah, I'm your sidekick, who's also a bit of a kid, except it's Phoebe Waller-Bridge's sidekick.
Yeah.
And he, I think, was added perfectly because he has like the curiosity, like you can feel like why these two hang out.
Yeah.
Which is not like you don't understand why Short Round is driving a taxi at the start.
Exactly.
Like, it's enough weird stuff happening at the beginning of Temple of Doom for you to not question it.
Yeah.
But you're obviously like, what do they do outside of that? Why is Indiana Jones hanging out with a child?
Exactly.
But like when you see these two and they're grifting all the time, you see it.
Then I appreciate that theirs was less. You get with Short Round where they're both very verbal. Like both characters are like saying quips to each other. It's very fun. But she like just kind of gives him a side eye and he knows what to do. Like they're connected like that. But I think she even mentions that they have a very similar. He tried to pickpocket her and then she took him in.
Yeah.
Very similar to Short Round.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I appreciated him. I didn't think he was a bad character in that he just wasn't there only to crack wise. He was more of like doing stuff in the background, and they were both like partners.
I mean, that's the thing though, is like Short Round's a great character. He's doing stuff. He literally saves Indy in Temple of Doom by burning him.
Yeah.
That's indicative of like the director or the screenwriter or whoever taking tropes from past Indiana Jones films, keeping them but updating them so they don't feel so jarring.
So we have Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character who grabs the Antikythera, and then the Nazis frame Indy for murder, and immediately they go on what I thought I would like in the beginning chase scene to kind of like the beginning chase scene in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where it's like all these like 50s greasers that are like, I get that guy, and then they like punch, and then they do a big old like American Graffiti style like silly thing. And I really like that scene too. Like, I'm a huge Crystal Skull apologist. So I thought that chase scene was really good. Like him on horseback and like they're running through this like beautiful parade and everybody else is like hijacking other vehicles to go after him. And then we have him running through the subway, getting chased by a subway train. And I was afraid that was going to become like a big thing, but it was a quick moment. He got away, and then he just hands off the horse, like, "Hey, hold my horse," and then walks
That's also
away.
my favorite thing is like they do the like classic one-off quip where he gets on the train and is like trains faster. To the lady who's like staring at him, having just rode a horse into whatever station that was.
Yeah. So then we get to him trying to get out and go chase Helena, and we see that he finally gets to hang out with some old friends, and we see Sala. And he's in America now.
Yep.
His family got here, and they're all learning about, and they're just as like educated about archaeology as he is, and they're having like a little
hang on.
Yes.
Everyone, this one.
Yes.
That was for first generation Americans. If you don't get why that scene was great, then you don't understand the struggle. I don't want to hear it. That was the most pure, like I never resonated more with the scene than when he is just lecturing his kids to make sure they have an encyclopedic knowledge of his weird love of history.
I think those were his grandkids.
I don't care.
Sure.
Our fathers drilled so many weird facts into our skulls.
So we see Sala, and it's really nice. And he's like, "Hey, I want to go with you, Indiana. I brought my passport." He's like, "This isn't an adventure. Come on. This is just me trying to get out and try to fix everything." And one moment that everybody online has been like chiding is that Indy is like framed for murder. He just says, "Give him hell, Indiana Jones," like at an airport. I don't care. It's the 60s.
Yeah.
The TSA doesn't exist yet. Who gives a shit? Okay? He gets on a plane.
He could have walked all the way to the plane, sat Indy down on the plane, yelled that in the middle of the plane, left, and it still would not have been out of place.
Exactly. And so that's the end of the first act. And I think we can kind of breeze through the second act just because it's mostly all of these action sequences of them chasing each other. And I didn't dislike how much the Nazis just keep showing up and chasing them, and then they like get away.
Because
from
they're not the Nazis; they're the CIA.
Oh, yes.
That then turn out to be Nazis.
I totally forgot that there is this subplot about the CIA is helping them because Werner von Braun, Mads Mikkelsen's character, helped him get to the moon. But then the president's just straight up like, I don't give a shit. You got us to the moon. Cool.
Yeah, we're done.
I'll give you a medal, but like, I'm not going to help you do whatever you're doing.
He doesn't even show up to get the medal.
Yes. And there's a great CIA agent that the entire time is just like, what the fuck is going
That was
on?
my least favorite. I will honestly say, if someone took like a blaxploitation character and tried to actually give them substance so that they didn't just become a trope,
Sure.
that was exactly who this woman was. Like, she had a depth to her, and she's motivated, and she dies so unceremoniously.
That's what I
that
mean.
it took me out of that was the only thing in the movie that I was like,
Yeah.
I liked this. Why did this have to be the thing? Oh yeah, that's right, because they're Nazis.
Yeah, like she's like a good cop, and then she's a slaughter spot, kill her nearly immediately.
Yeah.
Once we get out off of the first act.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating. I'm just like, I kind of would have liked it if the entire time she's trying to like in the background catch the Nazis or something. And that would have been better in a different movie where like maybe in the third act they do actually, she helps catch the Nazis. But yeah, she just gets killed, which is shitty. And so then they finally get to this hotel. And then, yeah, from there, we get a lot of like these other chase scenes and other moments where the Nazis are catching up to them. We start off in the hotel and she's selling off the Antikythera, trying to get a bunch of money for it. And that's when we get the capitalism line. And the moment where like Indy has this whip and he's like, back. And then everybody pulls out guns on him. And though that's quirky, I'm still also just kind of like, yeah, Indy, what are you doing, pal? Like, what is this? Did you feel like that was a fun moment?
I felt like, okay, there's obviously, that's a problem with like almost every scene in this movie. There's two ways to read it. There's the in the moment, Indy is just like, there's a bunch of hooligans in here, and every time I deal with hooligans, usually this is enough.
Sure.
Except like this is like he's been out of it for a while.
Fair.
So there's that. So he doesn't know that like, oh yeah, now everyone's packing.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, this is also a callback to the like meme from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he had food poisoning. So instead of doing a big fight scene, they just have the guy shows up, does a big spinny sword thing, and gets shot immediately.
And it goes bang, and then move on. And then I think they tried to do that again in Temple of Doom, but then he doesn't have his gun on him. So yeah, it's a fun trope with Indy, in that this, I just feel like, yeah, it was another indicative moment of like, he's an old man, isn't this silly? Like, it felt to me. I know that might just be me being really critical. But then from there they escape. They get in this huge car chase with Helena's ex-fiance, who's just like, please just come back to me. And they get in like one of those like three-wheeled cars. And I thought that was fun, but this, again, my biggest problem is how much of it was on like this big of a shot, like a medium.
Well, yeah, that's because this is
shot on green screen.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. Like this, the way they shot this was like you're driving down these narrow alleyways and stuff. They don't really have, I don't know any Indiana Jones movie that has anything like that.
Beginning of Temple of Doom, when they're running away from that club and they get into the taxi.
Yeah, no, but those streets, how can I put this? I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But the streets are like wider. They're like boulevards. This is like back alleys.
Sure.
So I understand your grievance.
I just still feel like it was too much cutting away, cutting here and there and all this other stuff. And that there was like one moment where they get a guy where they like hit a piece of wood and the wood smacks him like the Final Destination style. And so there were some fun parts in that. I won't disagree. But I do feel like the movie was just overly long with some of these parts that I'm just like, I don't.
As a
I'm not into
movie, I don't think it was that long. It just felt long because of how on it, like, it felt very Rise of Skywalker in that they were just trying to make sure there's something that was always happening.
Yeah.
So I can see why people would feel like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I think like they go from there to there, and then like this is an important part in that now you're seeing the mishmashing of Indy's skills and knowledge playing against her updated skills and knowledge, because the car chases, they both know the city, so they're both like giving each other crap about where to go in the city. Then they're like, all right, well, we're gonna have to go diving. So now Indy knows a contact, and we meet the most interesting cameo that wasn't a cameo. Oh my god, it was just so good though.
The entire time, I mean, like he was closer to like an older Mask of Zorro than anything, but we both just kept quoting Puss in Boots lines.
He is strong like the bull.
And man, that movie's really good.
It's so good.
The last is fucking perfect.
And so, well, like, and he's so good in the movie too. Like,
yeah, he's fine. Yeah,
Antonio Banderas destroys every scene he's in because he's just amazing. He plays like a limp-legged,
a frogman diver.
Yeah. And so he's like the best diver, even though his leg is injured. And it's just like that's the thing, is there's this like undertone of like, yeah, they're the old geezers are still around, but they're like they're not gatekeeping.
Sure.
They're like helping the young crew of the next generation get up to whatever.
If there was a 90s movie of Antonio Banderas in an Indiana Jones movie, I would have been so happy.
It would have been completely different. It would have been like a crossover. That would have just been a Zorro
rad.
Indiana Jones crossover.
That would be really fun.
Because he literally rode with Pancho Villa against Huerta. So like all the Mexican, I guess we're a century removed for that.
Exactly, yeah. And so they go, and on this boat trip where they're trying to find the like slab that will lead them to the last piece of the Antikythera, we have this speech that he kind of gives with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Helena, where she's just like, what do you do if you could go back in time? He's like, I would stop my son from being killed in war. And it's those moments that I'm like, I get that this is a really hurting Indy. Like, this isn't an Indy that's having a great time in his life. And that's what similarly to Crystal Skull, I'm just like, that feels bad. Indy is separated in my mind from anything happening in his personal life. He's just similarly that was the whole reason why like Spielberg wanted to make it. He's like, I've always wanted to do a James Bond type. James Bond, you don't know too much about his personal life. He's just like, similarly to John Wick, shows up and they're like, that's him. That's the guy. Everybody knows him before he shows up. And so for them to go back and be like, hey, yeah, remember Crystal Skull? We killed Shia LaBeouf. He went to war to spite his dad and he fucking died. And now Indy's getting divorced, you motherfucker.
Yeah, imagine you spited your director or executive producer so much that you died unceremoniously off screen. Also, I just checked. And technically, Antonio Banderas could play like a gruff older Zorro who's like giving Indiana Jones some tips on how to be a modern adventurer.
Like basically who Anthony Hopkins was in Mask of Zorro.
He becomes the Anthony Hopkins of Mask of Zorro.
They're pretty good. And yeah, that we have well, apparently there was a drama behind the scenes where, like Indiana Jones and Crystal Skull came out. Not too many people liked it. And Shia was pretty open about that. And like Harrison Ford chided him really bad and said like,
everyone chided him.
Yeah. He's like, you don't say that about the production. You just, it's a movie. Just enjoy the time. You don't need to be a dick about it. And so, like they kill him off, and that becomes his like hard past. And we see that's the moment that, like, for me, this movie from that moment on could have gone in so many different directions. Because you start off the movie, you're like, oh, maybe they go back in time to fight the Nazis. Oh, maybe he literally says, I'd go back in time and save my son from fucking dying in war. And then we also have like a couple of elements of like Archimedes, the Nazis, all this other stuff. So it gives you a couple of things to be mulling in the background, in the back of your head. And then they finally arrive and do the diving. And I feel like that diving scene was fun, but it was pretty quick. Like not too much happened that needed to happen besides finding it.
It was to me, it was very akin to Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're trapped inside the tomb with the snakes.
Yeah.
It's like they just need to get in, get out, and they're good.
And eels are like snake.
Well, underwater.
But underwater.
Very spooky.
And we've never had an underwater scene. So then they get the slab. There's very little fanfare to it. Just the Nazis show up, kill half the people on the boat. And then we find that they're holding him hostage. They're holding Antonio Banderas hostage. It's just, man, I just felt bad. I love Antonio Banderas. Stop using him as a bargaining chip. We see a moment of like, okay, where does Phoebe Waller-Bridge actually stand? Is she just kind of playing Indiana Jones? Yeah. Well, she's playing both sides, but it's just like, yeah, no, I'll just do this thing. I'll work with the Nazis. And we're like, oh no. And they give you that moment of like, is she doing that? Don't have to believe it. She grabs a piece of dynamite and we see that she's not actually going to betray them. It leads them somewhere else. I'm trying to remember the other place that it would have led them, the Nazis.
It's supposed to lead them to the Library of Alexandria.
That was it.
Psych, it's actually Sicily and near the city of Syracuse.
And so they find out that's where you got to go. And the Nazis are smart enough not to be like, cool, we got it, let's leave. They're just like, take out their binoculars and they're like, cool, we're going to follow them. We'll do that. And so we finally but the moment when the movie got really interesting to me, they go to find the tomb, they walk into the tomb, they're doing all this stuff. They have a very quick like flashback to Temple of Doom where there's some bugs. And the entire time I'm like, oh, cool, what is this going to be? The whole point, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about this, but like the point of the bugs in Temple of Doom was that Indy and Short Run don't really care too much about bugs. It's creepy, they don't mind. But that Willie hates bugs, so it's hard for her to overcome it. We have some tension. The bugs show up and it's like a quick nod. They literally have no consequence. When the Nazis come through, they don't even bring it up, like when they're following them. And then we finally get to the tomb, and this is the moment. This is the moment where I'm like, oh, what the fuck are we gonna do now? Where they foreshadow the ending, where they find Archimedes' tomb, and they're like, something's weird about this. This eagle has propellers. And
that was the moment I was like, oh no, please don't go chariots of fire here, or chariots of the gods here. Please.
You didn't like that?
No, because every time I see, like, I do not like the trope that like humans need special magic and that like aliens and helicopters used to exist before this, and the like whatever's light bulb is an actual light bulb and not actually.
Oh, you meant like aliens?
Yeah. So chariots of the gods is an entire trope that says that like aliens and extraterrestrials and all sorts of weird crap are the only reasons human society, especially non-Western human society, has been able to achieve the heights of engineering capability they were able to achieve. So when you see that
entire movie,
apropos of nothing, so when you see that apropos of nothing, you're like, oh no, this is going to be another weird aliens thing, isn't there?
Yeah. And we see that. And I like that they pull away from that, where they open the tomb and he has like a watch.
Yeah.
But
the watch is very out of time for him.
Yes.
And so that part makes sense because it's like, this is literally a modern watch. I think it's alluded that that's actually Indy's watch, or like, because like when the kid, or was it one of the Nazis' watch?
Mads Mikkelsen's watch. Yeah. And so they show that he's kind of like out of time. They're like, what the fuck is going on? He has the other piece of the Antikythera. They finally get it. And then they get captured by the Nazis. He was trying to protect the Antikythera. He tells Phoebe Waller-Bridge to go and he gets shot. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge is like, I'll come and help. And he's like, no, it's fine. They lug him away and then they get on the plane. Mads Mikkelsen gets into a Sunday best. And they're like, oh no, this is the Hail Hydra moment of like, no, this isn't like Nazis. These are new Nazis, neo-Nazis.
Yes.
Sure. And so that took me a moment. I'm just like, yes, exactly.
You did not invent that term.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so they get on the plane, and it was the moment where I'm like, yes, this is great. I don't know what's going to happen next. The rest of the entire movie, I'm like, this is all going to be whatever. But in the very end is like, well, where would they go in time? And it's not that the Dial of Destiny, when you plug in a bunch of numbers or whatever, do a calculation, it will lead you to wherever you want to be. The Dial of Destiny only aligns all of this math to tell you at this specific time, at this specific place, you will be able to time travel somehow, because of the cosmic blah, blah, blah. And so they're not even like, cool, I'm going to go back in time and do the Hitler stuff, which they think because
hang on. We have to stop and talk about this actual dial for a second.
Sure.
Because yes, the entire movie, it is implied that these Nazis believe that this dial will show you, like, for any time you want to go to, you punch in the date and it will tell you when and where a portal will open.
Sure.
Then we get to the climax of the movie where he goes through this temporal rift shenanigans.
Yes.
And now he's over Syracuse. And also, I gotta say, what a delicious moment that Nazi's like, of course we did it right. Look, there's Syracuse. Classic 1939 Syracuse. Everyone knows what Syracuse looked like in 1939, you fools.
Yeah.
Except it's obviously like a war is happening down there that's about 2,000 years out of place.
Yeah.
Here's the like craziest part. Archimedes built a clock that only tells you how to get back to that moment in time.
Yes.
And he, like, what a bet. That he's in the middle of the battle.
Yeah.
And his idea was, I'm going to build this clock that I have no clue how it works until the middle of the battle where he sees an airplane fly over and scare away the Roman legions. And like, what a bold bet. The entire battle is happening and he's still inventing this thing he's hoping will pay off in the future / the past.
Yeah. And that the entire time they were speculating, oh, cool, it's going to give me the ability to go back to this specific time in 1939 from 1969. No, this goes back thousands of years, and that Indy kind of alludes to it with continental drift.
Yeah.
That he's like, no, this has nothing to do with that because we've been doing calculations based on continental drift. That's not what happened. Then they go back in time and have that battle, and that it was a distress signal to the future to save him. And I think even in light of that, don't they lose? Like, don't they lose to the
eventually?
Yeah. Like, no, but at that battle, I thought that was the whole point. Is that
the entire point is they scared away the Roman Navy because they show up with their big weird plane that shoots bullets.
Oh no, but I thought historically, like, they lost at the Battle of Syracuse, and that led to
Archimedes dying.
So yes, we have all of that, and they show up, and it's It's amazing. And this is what I mean about the them alluding back to the TV show. The TV show was about that. It was about history and how you could learn through archaeology, historical events. And they just straight up have the moment of, at the very beginning of the movie, he shows like Archimedes helped them do this and this. They'd pull ships out of the sea and it was great. And they'd have a laser in the sky using the sun. And then they go back and see exactly that. And it's one of those first act callbacks that I'm like, you sons of bitches. You got me. I'll forgive everything else.
Chekhov's big mirror that sets fire to enemy ships.
Yep. Exactly. And so they're flying around, and we basically get the comeuppance, where I feel like there was a big thing that a lot of people were saying, where like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, if Indy wasn't there, the Nazis would have gotten the Ark and then all killed themselves, right? Like Indy didn't need to be there for them to do that. That defeats the purpose of storytelling. Like that's not the fun of the movie.
Also, they would have, and it's implied, never found the Ark. They were not doing a good job finding it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have all of this of them, like people saying like, well, Indy isn't even a hero. It's like, no, he's an archaeologist. Like he's not even good at it, frankly. He doesn't usually bring the artifacts back. It's just the fun of what's happening. And that this one is similar, where if they technically got the Antikythera and went back in time, the Nazis probably would have just died. Either they would have turned their plane around and lost, or they would have exactly what happened, had their comeuppance and died hilariously trying to shoot back at Romans. Like my God, that was really fun. That they just keep getting shot with giant spears. I was so confused
by that because they're like flying around. And it's like the Roman spear can only shoot so high. Just pull up.
Exactly. Yeah, they just were. It's too angry to do that. Yeah. They're just like, nah, fuck you, Romans. We'll do that shit. We have them in that plane. They save Phoebe Waller-Bridge gets in like the wheel well to save Indy, which is fun.
Sneaky beaky, like
exactly. And then we finally have the short round character who is following them in another plane, which he had gotten some training when he was back at that hotel, and we see it. They deliberately set it up that he's like playing around with airplane
like
stuff.
He literally is. He's so invested in this that in the hotel scene, he literally has created what he thinks is a facsimile of the cockpit.
Yeah.
And I love the part where it's like, do you think you could fly that? It's like, I've never flown a blah, blah, blah before. Like, you never flown anything before. Like Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character literally says like, how is that even part of the equation?
Yeah, come on. Don't be shitty about this. But it gets it started and he follows them. And so that's their ticket out. And I love that the pilot who he wakes up is probably very pissed that he's like, oh my God, where am I? What's happening? But he's also just kind of like, no, pull up. We'll do this. It'll be fine. It's fine. And he's kind of playing along. But then they finally jump off. They get off the plane just in time for the Nazis to die. And then they land and Archimedes shows up. And it's like, I love it. I love this stuff. This is the dumb, campy shit I wanted to see the whole movie. That was just a wide and a weird thing is happening and you're there for it. And so they meet Archimedes, and this was another moment where it went from super check plus to check minus when Indy just straight up says, let me die here in the past and ruin history. Like, let me be a blemish on historical accuracy. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's sad that we've gotten to the end of the third act and Indy is so depressed that he wants to escape his reality so much that he would stay in the past. And that was one moment I'm like, oh, okay. I'm less happy about this, but please go compliment Archimedes more on being great. Please, can we do that for a moment? What do you think about that?
So this is okay. Well, here's the thing: is do we want to wrap this up in a bow first, so I can get into my big thesis, or do you want to do this?
Yeah, let me just finish it off. So instead of that, Phoebe Waller-Bridge amazingly is just like, no, you're an idiot, and punches him straight in the face, gets him into the plane. They go back, and then he wakes up back in his bed in Manhattan. And so presumably Brooklyn, whatever.
Yeah, Indiana Jones has the superpower that they never mentioned, which is he can get hit in the head violently and be knocked out without ever suffering any sort of long-term mental damage whatsoever. It's incredible.
And besides using a lot of John Williams' score for this movie, they use the exact same punch sound effect that sounds like a shotgun going off. And I was like, oh, I love hearing this in Dolby. It's amazing. As well as the gun sound effects. All of the sound library was there. I think there was a Wilhelm scream. It just might have been pitched differently. But then he wakes up, and then Phoebe Waller-Bridge has I think that was her moment. I wanted a moment like The Last Crusade, where she's like so hell-bent on this thing and like greedy, and then he pulls her out of it, kind of like Sean Connery did for him. Like, I thought that would happen. But no, it's still about Indy and how like fucked he is. And so I think she sees the like depths of it. It's like, oh my God, this dude's really out of it. And so then she calls in Marion, and Sala, and they all come and they all wish him a happy day. And it's a pleasant ending. I'll say that it's nice, and there's like a little bit of like, oh, this can be nice, but like it still hurt me. It hurt me deep down that this wasn't as chipper as the end of Crystal Skull, or chipper as the end of any of the other movies, where it's like, we've wrapped up everything. Now Indy's going to go on to another adventure. It's fine he's not going on another adventure, but I dislike that it ends.
Might be. You don't know.
Maybe, but
he's going on to the adventure of fathering a woman after his son died. So
sure, yeah. Now he has a support network. Like, it ends with a good mental health note. I appreciate that, but yeah, it was ending on that note still left me with a dour feeling that I'm just like, this is Indiana Jones. Like, I love him so much, and to leave him on a note that he's going to have a quiet life in Manhattan is totally fine, but getting there just felt kind of gross after meeting Archimedes, you know? So here we are. We're at the end. Yeah. Yes.
It ends with a cute Miriam comes in and
they do the callback.
They do a callback to Raiders of the Lost Ark where he's like, oh, where does it hurt? It hurts here. And then they kiss. And it's very
so
cute.
Good. Yeah.
And it's adorable. And then they have a circle wipe on him reaching out the window for his hat.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's
right.
just, here's the thing. I thought that ending was, honestly, I'm going to use this word and you're going to make fun of me. Perfect.
Really?
I thought, here's
interesting.
The entire movie has a very clear idea of what the motif is.
Okay.
The general idea
like
is
theming.
Time does not matter. What we do with our time matters. Literally, the first thing is like a Nazi trying to figure out they are out of time. They're out of whatever. How do we do, like, you just didn't do a good job with the time you had. So obviously you're losing World War II. Yeah. Then Indy is literally handed a clock as his retirement gift that he immediately gives away because he doesn't give a crap about how the time is, like, the clock looks fancy and historic. It's like, he doesn't care about that. He cares about the like life of an archaeologist he's been living. And it's also the idea that somehow getting the dial will give you control over time, when in reality it was about all the things that happened up until this point allowed for this outcome, and that treating the dial with such reverence that the Nazis did completely blinded them to any benefit that would have come from having such power.
Sure.
And then the flip side of this is like how Indiana Jones feels throughout the movie. In the beginning, he's very driven. He's chasing history. He doesn't even care about the Antikythera. Or the Spear of Longinus. Gotta say it right.
Yeah.
He just cares that, like, oh, there was a bunch of very important history on this train that I saved. And now it's going to go in a museum. Yeah. Because I saved it. Because I love museums. I think he gets free admission to all museums he saves a piece of art for.
Yeah, he said that twice in the movies. Like, it belongs in a museum. I'm like, hell yeah, it does. Good job, Indy.
Keep her there. So now he's like out the other end where he's done all this globetrotting, and everything he's kind of built. And I think they did this a million times better than they did it in what was it, The Force Awakens, in terms of like having an old established character feel like they have nothing left, instead of just it being like, I suck and I turned into a smuggler or whatever. Is literally like, yeah, he lived his life. And now as he's getting to the end of his life, he's looking back and he feels out of place because he's used to have a very clear idea of the kind of person he was. And now he's not even going to be a teacher anymore. Yeah. He's not going to be any of the things he was before. And that's my favorite thing, is like, he doesn't want more adventures. He just thought he would have more of a network by the end. Sure. And so now he goes on this adventure very reluctantly to basically help his goddaughter. Like, it's very clear that he's doing this out of love and not out of a desire to go on a big wacky adventure, because he also is like, we're basically helping Nazis, we probably shouldn't do that, that really sucks. So he's like, he has a very clear sense of who the players are. Yeah. But then that entire mentality shifts, because Indy never believes in like this supernatural thing until he's confronted with it. Yeah. Every single time Indiana Jones is going after an artifact, he doesn't believe the Holy Grail is going to magically heal someone. Yeah. He just is confronted with the Holy Grail and is like, all right, well, I guess we're here. We'll see what happens. Sure. So he goes through the time thing and he's seeing history and he's like, I have nothing left like my network isn't there, and I have become so closed off to the world that if my daughter or my goddaughter hadn't showed up, what would his life have been like after that? So it's very clear, like, all right, I went through the time portal and everything is like way more interesting here. So I think I'd rather just die here of either my current wounds or something else rather than have to go back to a reality where I feel like there's no tomorrow to look forward to.
Exactly. See, and that's something that I think a lot of movies now are really digging into. It was a similar thing in Everything Ever All at Once, a similar thing a little bit in Across the Spider-Verse, but how escaping your own reality because you're dealing with something that seems insurmountable. You're in a deep depression. You're in a poor state of whatever, economically or financially.
This is also why I hated Avatar, because in Avatar it's very clearly implied that being in the Na'vi body is like you're living the dream.
Yeah.
And so the main character never has to learn to live with reality. He gets to live in the dream forever.
It's all escapism. Yeah.
Here, Indy is looking for that same escapism. It's the same idea, like, oh, I've been given this incredible gift to escape. Why wouldn't I want to do that? And so this is the important thing. That is the action climax of the film. The emotional climax of the film doesn't happen until he wakes up after he's punched out.
And I agree. I think everything you just said is probably the best way to interpret this movie. And I think that it's giving me a new light. I might like it a little bit more now. But that my gripe with it is that happens like that. Is that it happens where we don't have that moment in the beginning of Indy doing that, of Indy being like, this all sucks. I kind of want to go on an adventure. He's reluctant to go on the adventure in the beginning. And that by the end, he is like, no, I'd rather stay here. I would have much rather he started off as this flawed character that wants to escape his shitty life, and then at the very end realizes that there's more worth living for. That doesn't happen until he's already back and Phoebe Waller-Bridge has dragged him back. So that's my big gripe, is that you don't get him making the decision for himself until he's already back. And then he realizes, oh, there's more I have worth living for.
Well, what's also nice about that is it keeps that ambiguity of when you see the tomb of Archimedes and you see the watch, and you've seen, they give you a red herring where the kid steals Indy's watch, and you're like, if you weren't paying attention, or I honestly thought, it's like, someone steals his watch and it dies and is in that tomb. And then now that he wants to stay, it's like, is Archimedes actually Indiana Jones?
Oh my God, no. Wait, what?
Yeah, you didn't pay attention to like any of those red herrings that they're trying to imply that like someone from the future stays in the past?
Kind of. I mean, primarily the two elements that I thought that would that got rid of that in my mind is that the kid gives him his watch back immediately. Because
but that doesn't mean anything, because a dead body with the watch is there. I thought like Indy's has a watch. That could have been him.
Point. No, that's
they
fair.
Established he has the watch.
And that brings up a couple of other red herrings too. That I agree that that would have been fucking crazy. That he would be Archimedes, as in like that.
Or the person in the
body.
tomb.
Yes. Okay. Then that makes a lot of sense. But also that there was a part of me considering that in Crystal Skull they had the alien stuff, interdimensional beings or whatever, that I had a moment where the beginning of the movie is about the moon landing. So I was like, are they gonna go to space? Like there were so many things that I'm just like, they could do anything by the end of this movie. So what are they gonna do? So like, by the end, that one moment where they show Archimedes' tomb, I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. I'm very excited.
I thought that was very clever. That keeps open-ended. It's like, all right, it implies some sort of weird time traveling wonkiness has happened.
Not only Archimedes is trying to like save himself in a civilization after a war is basically going to claim them, but same thing with the Nazi guy, like Mads Mikkelsen. They're weirdly both connected in a way that I don't think they both realize. The pursuit of archaeological exploration is the one thing that's more important.
I mean, that's the theme. Ironically, that is the theme throughout all the Indiana Jones films, which is that Indy is not interested in treasure. He's interested in what the archaeological context is. And the treasure is just the byproduct. He's not interested in the Ark for the sake of using it for Nazi magic.
Sure.
He's interested in the Ark because the Ark is an important piece of history. He's interested in the stones because the stone, that's the other thing. Temple of Doom is weird because the stones have like nothing to do with history for him. They're literally just
saving a group of people.
Yeah, with literal magic stones.
Yes.
And then Last Crusade, he doesn't give a crap really about the chalice, like in terms of like having eternal life. He's just like, you could find the Holy Grail, which my dad has been searching for his entire life. I got to rub in his face.
Yeah. And I think that this movie did the best at that, where not only he does go back in time, if you're going to make the end for a character him actually being at an archaeological like find in the time, great. I think that was probably the most perfect thing they could have done, and they did it very well. And also that I think this MacGuffin, probably the closest to be like, this is a historical element. We didn't put God in a box. We don't have stones that a thuggy cult is trying to steal. We don't have the Holy Grail from biblical allegory, and we also don't have a skull of an alien. Like, all of those elements are weirdly occult in some nature. This one's like, this is a thing you could find in a museum, actually, and that we're going to kind of pursue and show the history behind it. Apparently James Mangold came in and they gave him the script and he's like, this is dumb. What are you guys doing? Like, this is kind of an Indiana Jones script, but it's missing a lot of like core elements. And then he left. He's like, well, I'm not going to do it if you guys use the script. And they reapproached him. They said, okay, what would you do different? And then he wrote this. And I will agree that I think that on the whole, this was pretty good. And they did Indy justice, I'll say. But also...
Hashtag justice for Indy.
Exactly. But also, I'm just a grump. I just wanted Temple of Doom again. And I'm just going to rewatch.
You can't savor the cake.
Nope. Can't have my cake.
Yep.
You needed to. So the last thing I want to say before we wrap this up and go move on to Asteroid City is that I couldn't help but notice that James Mangold, very good director, very much liked him, liked Ford v Ferrari, and I liked Logan, which was another franchise movie in which an old character who's part of a franchise is begrudgingly brought back in for one last ride and has to foster a younger version of himself through a bunch of trials and tribulations to come out on top at the end. So I thought that was very interesting that they kind of have a bit of that in here, similar to Logan, and that it was good. And I liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. I liked a lot of elements of it, but goddamn, I'm not going to let go how much I just wanted him to be bouncing around and punching Nazis and doing a bunch of dumb bullshit.
Yeah, I also thought it was weird when I went through the time warp and you hear like, that doesn't
Exactly,
that feels
yeah.
very out of place.
Yeah, and yeah, well, isn't Harrison Ford going to be in a new Marvel movie?
Maybe.
Yeah, I heard that he's going to be in the new Captain America. And to pinch off this video, what he said and what Anthony Mackie said about him is that the one phrase is like, yeah, Harrison Ford wasn't super enthusiastic about it. And on every day when we would start filming, he'd say like, well, let's film this piece of shit.